future reactors to stop a molten core escaping if an accident, however unlikely, occurred. Seaborg was an ardent proponent of large reactors.
We think that it will be possible to build huge nuclear power reactors that will produce electricity at the rate of millions of kilowatts and desalt seawater at the rate of hundreds of millions of gallons a day.
Seaborg asked for the letter not to be published. The impact on the industry might be serious, he said, and the public might misunderstand it. He and his fellow commissioners would deal with the problem in private.
All I can say is that we tried to take such steps as we could to follow their advice, to make the changes that would make them safe.
So what did you say to the manufacturers?
We had meetings with the manufacturers and discussed the issue with them. I think they were doing the best they could, and I don't know that we ever made a tremendous push to try to get them to change their whole manufacturing system.
Why not?
Oh, I think it was, at that time, not regarded as a feasible approach.
We asked General Electric to come in and discuss how they might cope with this, and in effect they came in and showed the problems that would arise with their containment and indicated they didn't think they wanted to continue selling power reactors if they were going to have to deal with the core melt problem. Westinghouse showed something called a core catcher, but no proof of how it would work. Neither company was anxious to deal with the problem, obviously.
Well, General Electric, in effect, threatening you. They're saying, if you insist on this, then we'll just pull out of this.
It was a kind of threat, I think, yes.
What would have happened if you had said, I think these plants that are being built, these enormous plants by General Electric and Westinghouse, are potentially dangerous? What would have happened if you'd said that?
Well, that's a hypothetical question.
You had the power to do it. What would have happened?
I don't think we had the power to stop them. Well, we could have refused to license them, of course. But again, I think that in the context of the times, it's not a question that makes much sense.
Indian Point and the other reactors were built without the redesign the committee had asked for. Instead, the AEC ordered a massive upgrading of the capacity of the emergency cooling systems to prevent a core from ever melting. In effect, the manufacturers had got their way, but they had set a terrible trap for themselves. In contrast, in the Soviet Union, the grandiose nuclear plans of the 50s had remained on the drawing board. The Soviet planners were unconvinced they could be constructed cheaply. The physicists and engineers spent their days designing reactors that would not get built. Then, in the mid-60s, Brezhnev came to power. He believed that the road to communism lay through giant technological projects. The nuclear power program began again. It was dominated by Anatoly Alexandrov, a famous physicist who had designed what was known as the RBMK reactor. His team planned giant versions to be built around Soviet cities.
Я считал и считаю сейчас, что атомная энергетика чрезвычайно важна, потому что никакого топлива, ни газа, ни нефти, ну и в меньшей степени угля, но тоже, не хватит для существования человечества даже в течение тысячелетия. Она чище, экологически чище всех остальных видов энергетики.
The idyllic picture of a nuclear Eden masked a reality in which safety was barely even considered. The reactors were built at great speed to cut costs and to fulfill the Soviet plan. Some had no protective containment at all, despite the high pressures of steam. Large amounts of water, contaminated by radiation from the reactor core, were pumped into giant open ponds.
А потом решили строить уже крупный в 1 миллион киловатт. В 1973 году был построен первый блок, и вслед за ним следующий. Но поскольку я участвовал в этих работах, был на площадках, где строилось, то я видел, что в погоне за успехом как бы потеряли чувство меры.
Complete safety for the attending personnel is ensured at the atomic power plant. The slightest radioactive contamination can be detected with the aid of radiation monitors. At the exit of the washroom, there is a dosimetric installation. This will not let you out if there is the slightest trace of radioactivity about you.
При Брежневе началось активное разложение, воровство, пренебрежение к делу и так далее. И когда к концу 70-х годов эра Брежнева достигла своего апогея, это совпало с максимумом развития ядерной энергетики, и стало это просто все понятно, и это видели многие. Попытки как-то решить это дело путем служебных записок не имели значения. Нужна была публикация в крупном журнале.
Koryakhin and a fellow engineer wrote an article in the newspaper Communist. It openly challenged Alexandrov. It criticized the lack of safety in the design of the plants, where they were sited, and the growing question of what to do with the nuclear waste. It caused a sensation.
Была создана специальная пресс-конференция, где было сказано, что эта статья клеветническая, что это все не так, все это неправда, хотя это было уже многим ясно, так как я бы сказал, научная мафия во главе с Александровым и Институтом атомной энергии, она заняла удобное положение, потому что все награды, ордена, звания, поездки за границу и всякие, как у нас в России говорят, пироги и пышки доставались им, а синяки и шишки доставались простым инженерам в других институтах. Это довольно широко бывает в жизни. Часто бывает в жизни.
Britain, meanwhile, struggled just to make her plants work.
So far, the first of the advanced gas-cooled reactors being built here on the Kent coast at Dungeness hasn't produced a single watt of electricity. Ordered at a cost of £80 million and due to be commissioned in 1972, it might just start producing electricity in 1977. And really, nobody has a clue how much it's going to cost us. So, why is it that things have gone wrong? For a start,
it is with pride.
When Cawdor Hall was opened, we were leading the world by 3 years. I can only feel terribly sad because I've seen that lead thrown away. I find it difficult to put it any other way.
A nuclear generating plant is as harmless as a chocolate factory.
But a lot more nuclear power is needed. Nuclear power. The power to keep America turning on.
In America, the enormous nuclear plants ordered in the 60s were nearing completion. The engineers in charge were beginning to discover the trap they had set themselves by failing to redesign the containment. If a molten core could not be contained, then the emergency systems to prevent a meltdown would have to work, whatever happened. The engineers had to anticipate everything that could possibly go wrong. In the enormous complexity of the plants, this was proving impossible.
One of the main things we began to discover is that our theoretical calculations did not have a strong correlation with reality. While the regulations required emergency core cooling systems, pumps and valves, we didn't really have any basis for knowing that those pumps and valves would actually prevent a meltdown of the reactor. Because the degree of complexity of trying to predict what will happen inside a huge reactor in the midst of a pipe break, we couldn't make any judgments because we didn't have any facts on which to make judgments.
During the winter of 1971, a series of tests of emergency core cooling systems were performed at the AEC's private testing site in Idaho. Accidents were simulated in a small model